Well, hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Cosmic Revelation, where today we will be looking at this book by George Lobuono called Alien Mind: The Thoughts and Behaviors of Extraterrestrials. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you would like to hear more about disclosure. And I will be diving in. So I'm going to start like halfway through the book here. And it starts with further dangers of electrogravity. There's evidence that misuse of electrogravity, a type of artificial gravity, can have harmful side effects. Such dangers are due to the delta T, the speeding of time caused by the fact that electrogravity and magnetogravity borrow large amounts of energy from empty space in order to exceed the speed of light. The negative cycle that defines electrogravity connects small exotic negative energy fluctuations of space-time. Ultimately, such fluctuations can resonate across great distances because the universe has no outer edge. Instead, hyperspace connects phenomena on a cosmic scale to fluctuations on a micro scale. And when negative energy fluctuations connect via electrogravity and magnetogravity, they slightly change the flow of time. As various aliens have pointed out, large-scale use of electrogravity can speed the clock on a given people's sun, and if used without delicate countervailing safeguards, can lead to seismic, atmospheric, and other instabilities. But what happens when electrogravity is used directly on humans during abductions and psychotronic communications, or during soft weapons use? Are there any dangers? There certainly are. Some abductees report radiation burns on their bodies after being near alien craft. Such burns may occur when electrogravity converts into electromagnetism, radiation a la Bearden. Worse yet, if electrogravity/magnetogravity is used directly on humans, it can speed the clock on human gene structures, which is dangerous because human genes have a limited number of telomeres, structures that shorten in length each time a cell replicates. Since electrogravity speeds time in areas surrounding its focus, it could shorten telomeres and prematurely age human tissue during abductions and other uses. Again, this is due to Bearden's delta T, a basic universal energy conversion. Prematurely aged genetic material is prone to mutation and cancer. So when alien abductors use electrogravity to slow brain processes and limit human awareness, the delta T effect speeds time in surrounding body tissues. This is partly why aliens genetically engineer themselves to tolerate such radiation, both during travel and while using psychotronic technology. Ironically, when electrogravity is used in finely adjusted advanced ways, it should allow for longer cell life and hardier living systems, i.e. when doing direct energy feed to body cells, reconfiguration of genetic material to retard aging, accelerated healing, and replacement of damaged cells. Such advancements aren't achieved overnight. However, as we noted earlier, hyperversal aliens know how to deftly converge and cancel out multiple categories of gravitic energy by spreading it out so that the effects aren't so immediately local, which minimizes the apparent speeding of time. Again, this is the alt-T that some hyperversals have hinted about. The Intergalactic Federation of Sovereign Planets like the Greys, may not be able to correct the delta T effect of their technology on humans. So humans should be wary of abductions, propagandistic displays of electrogravity, and so on. The spectacle of abductors' technology seems awesome to humans, but if the price is destabilization of your sun, then forced refuge in a lifeless star system, it may not be worth it. By now, the Verdants, who reportedly live longer than other intergalactic federal sovereign planet aliens, should be able to either minimize the delta T or possibly alt cycle it, which may help to explain why they live so long. Nonetheless, the fact that other IFSP aliens haven't been afforded the same life-prolonging healthcare suggests that we shouldn't expect IFSP aliens to use electrogravity on humans in healthy ways. There are political and resource issues surrounding the question of who lives longest to be best educated in a large collective like the IFSP. This complicated by emotional desensitization that comes with great extended lifetimes. Hyperversal aliens of much longer duration have reportedly pointed out a further risk in the overuse of electrogravity and magnetogravity. Delta T hyperdynamics point to the fact that electrogravity ever so slightly shortens the duration of a universe cycle. Even though hyper-advanced aliens can minimize delta T locally, they can only do so at a total cost to a universe cycle's duration. This poses a dilemma for all aliens. To recklessly shorten the duration of an entire universe cycle would be irresponsible. Hence, as humans are now beginning to learn, larger conventions regarding the use of negative cycle technology appear to have been discussed, long before the appearance of human civilization. In order to get the basic drift of off-world conventions in this regard, humans need to essentially step out of their skin and try to see the universe as a variety of other aliens do. In a universe where aliens live and connect in hyperspace, there are political exigencies on a galaxy scale and larger. These populations tend to a variety of far-flung planets, dependencies, and resource locations. Some situations of the sort involve manipulation of less developed, less capable populations. In such cases, a more advanced population may think it has achieved a relative mastery of negative cycle technology. Nonetheless, there may be gaps in the knowledge of aliens who evolved such technology within the last billion years or so. They may not know the extent to which electrogravity affects the duration of the universe cycle. This is a most serious subject. In a basic sense, advanced communities are obligated to cultivate a finer delta T/alt T conservation to err on the side of caution if necessary. So humans should expect to hear more about delta T/alt T conservation. In some cases, we may feel frustrated by more advanced populations who may try to slower or tinker with human technology evolution. Now that electrogravity technology has fallen into the hands of a corrupt human subculture, a rabbit-like breeding scenario, i.e. verdant, appeared to be the greatest off-world fear. Then again, verdant expansion tends to kill off certain planets and make non-sexuals of various others. So in the end, although verdants make heinous mistakes, some hyperversals hardliners rationalize verdant excess as having eliminated aggressive delta T and weapons violators. There have been abundant off-world chatter about the subject. Some discussions of the sort are highly pitched and involve vast-scale controversies. Questions of law and basic decency. These are major debates that affect us now. They should be discussed by human governments. Such issues loom highly in debates and analysis about how newly technological populations will evolve in a finite universe. In order to counter verdant IFSP violations here, I've worked to remotely locate and notify possibly decent verdant authorities who might be able to report back to better-minded verdants. I've notified verdant females about criminal behaviors among some of their male counterparts, due to heavy-handed pressures in their bureaucracy. Few are expected to speak out. Imagine how it is. An entire planet could be ruined. What kind of minds would you be up against? Meanwhile, non-sexuals in the IFSP seem to be better understanding that verdant crimes can damage their external relations and deepen collective security countermeasures against them. Given some non-sexual skepticism of verdant's ability to meet supercluster standards at present, some IFSP non-sexuals may opt for alternative channels or home planet groups that study verdant behavior of the sort. So, it starts to get into the negative cycle mindscape. The following considerations are largely derived from aliens' input and should be, in part, reflect the thinking of a larger off-world community. If we define the mindscape of an individual or community in negative or alt-cycle terms, then the physics of mind are marginally extra-dimensional. I know that it may sound confusing to some readers, so here's an explanation in simple graphic terms. The physics of mind involve subtle fluctuations that allow for an information capacity that exceeds old notions of the human's brain information byte capacity. This is possible because the fractional values of a mind's information involve larger universal relationships. Once an individual becomes sensitized to negative energy fluctuations, either through a subtle, seemingly darkened inner attentiveness or through direct interaction with aliens who think in such terms, finer extra-dimensional values begin to suggest themselves. The extent to which they do so is astounding and owes to a pre-existing higher kind of science. There is much more than meets the eye. Any slightest change in time, i.e. during your thought processes, cycles both through your mind and the larger universal relationships that define it. In short, your thoughts resonate ever so slightly within the deeper dimensions of a larger universe. It's as though your thoughts pull on tightly wound strings of tension at the subatomic level, causing a slight but accessible change in the finer, airy dimensions surrounding you. In a sense, when your mind pulls on those tiny strings, some of the information out there can resonate back to you. You move beyond old bounds, and a more advanced awareness can spread in you. By being ever so slightly attentive to such going-ons, your mind becomes capable of a much greater awareness. Depending on your circumstance, you may begin to interact with aliens and will be able to completely and effectively communicate with alien offenders. I know this sounds strange to some readers. Some may say scientists assume there are extra dimensions, yet we do not know how to access them. They're wrong. Many humans do so daily, while most aliens do so as a matter of course. They define themselves in such terms. To be competent, they must do so. If you don't think in terms of extra dimensions just yet, don't worry. Simply relax and take time to think it all through. Telepathy and expanded sensitivities don't develop overnight. It may take a while. Your key to doing so may be to practice Toshi, for example, Or you may begin to notice a finer multiplicity of perspectives in your mind that you can inversely pulse and expand in a more elastic way. Unlike the fixed and rigid linearity of old concepts, you may find yourself subtly feeling into those tiny moments, between moments, so to speak. You may begin to sense a deeper resonance among the subtle goings on around you. In either case, you begin to feel into hyperspace. You'll find yourself actively picking up on finer extra details in the universe around you. So the problem is that alien societies have some of the so-called hyperversals have had difficulty evolving past Big Brother-like abuses that can accompany the use of mind-activated psychotronic systems. In a sense, some humans represent a fresh break from such conformity. Given our attention to individual rights and liberties, to aliens, humans represent a kind of physical rigor and genetic diversity, plus an extension of legal guarantees against abusive government. However, honesty can be painful. To admit the truth about offending regimes here, among us, can be trying in the short term, yet if we don't do so, we remain trapped in a vicious cycle. Given their long lives and ancient bureaucracies, aliens can degrade, so we need to be honest and critical of them. Sometimes we see relatively good aliens who veil themselves and do wrong in order to provoke humans into sharpening our critique of alien offenders. It's a dodgy, backhanded tactic, but it happens. Among aliens, manipulative skullduggery is rife, yet is transparent to patient observers. Okay, I'm just trying to find this other part that really stood out to me. So the following are some of the reasons why the Three Ellipticals faction says they encourage certain mega populations. No, that's not it. So as you can see, once we begin to interact on a galaxy scale, the entire universal ecology comes into focus. How do we encourage interactions and accords, plus the exchange of ideas and controls between galaxies? Let's look at further alien statements. There's a part in here where it tells what the aliens have been doing to us to try to shape our reality. So, in the worst cases, a healthy, independent biome may be seen as a direct challenge to a megapopulation's control. Within a megapopulation, we sometimes note a trance-like resonant quality in those who insist that they aren't individuals but are instead solely composed of group mind. Meanwhile, some individuals of the sort are middling characters who hide within amorphous qualities and try to find themselves only in spatial terms and non-form. In the group sense, dogmatic rigidity can creep into the equation, a smothering of critique. Aging megapopulation aliens sometimes assume that they already did all of the necessary thinking long ago. Hence, They need merely resonate and observe coldly thereafter. Some may try to obscure their own multiple sourced histories and pretend not to notice that their specious relations presume a mastery of insight about other aliens' histories. So it says, are some genetic and other alterations designed to make a given people easier to manage and control? The question is especially relevant here on Earth. The IFSP is now so deeply immersed in an abduction and breeding program here that human abductees have been told they can be used for reproductive purposes because they belong to the abductors. Richard Boylan, who considers himself the IFSP's leading counselor of Earth, wrote me saying that the same aliens did genetic improvements of humankind in the past. Hence, they have the right to intervene here because we belong to them. Abductee Emily told David Jacobs about how gray aliens see humans in terms of how we can be used. When a hybrid bred by grays to look human argued with a gray about how he wanted a 15-year-old human abductee to be his sexual assignee, the gray told him that the girl was a resource, not a resort. In a similar vein, Whitley Strieber once noted that his abductor's main fear was human independence. Other abductees cite the abductors plan to control Earth after an escalated crisis of some sort. Abductee Reshma Kamal told David Jacobs that a late-stage hybrid explained about his aliens. And he's saying that all they're interested in, that no matter what happens at all, is that they control. But why would a mega population want to control other populations? Control allows them to quickly replace old ideas and conventions with the mega population's preferences. Such people are easier to assimilate and their planet's resources easier to make use of. Afterwards, from the verdant perspective, populations dispute less among themselves when a more advanced authority is in control. But how much control are we talking about? Reshma Kamal was told that after the aliens get their way on Earth, the abductors will have total control and national governments won't be necessary because there will be one system with one goal. Of course, the more drastic a targeted population's predicament, the more quickly they can be altered and assimilated, which suggests that some regime-minded megapopulations may actually prefer to provoke escalated disasters on a target planet in order to obliterate its previous identity. It's a risky strategy because target populations can be sharply critical of alien colonizers. They may be reluctant to give up their independence, irrespective of inducements. Sometimes a target people's own colonial history will have been repressive. So why would they trust an alien colonizer? Perhaps they don't. In some cases, perhaps it's desperation that leads some into the fold. More chilling still are indications that verdants may try to eliminate other aliens' genes for emotion and sensitivity, genes that might otherwise cause them to criticize verdants or dispute further takeovers. If there were too much empathy and sensitivity in their genetic makeup, IFSP aliens might resent the conflicts and atrocities that verdant breeding program operatives manipulate on target planets. Those allegedly schemed by the IFSP's direct operatives here on Earth, or those that a verdant said were manipulated on 2 other planets. Humans who wonder whether this is actually happening need to remember the IFSP is a colonizer that has a long history of such doings. They admit it. So in order to reduce tensions in the IFSP, are the genes for troublemaking simply eliminated? To do so would pose a different kind of danger. Let's see. Genetically altered aliens may be less capable of the empathy and outspokenness needed to protest manipulated crimes against targeted people. Obedient genetically modified aliens may feel less need to speak out against verdant manipulations, both within the IFSP and externally. Evidence for this is seen in abductee reports about aliens who inflicted great pain as though to condition abductees, and aliens who watched while a dazed adult human was forced to rape an adolescent female abductee, apparently as part of an experiment. The IFSP's reported use of girls as young as age of 11 for reproduction is further evidence of emotional disconnect. Non-IFSP aliens allege much worse crimes against humanity attributed to the IFSP's direct operatives. Direct operatives may be cultivated by the IFSP to commit acts of extreme cruelty against humans. Human female abductees told David Jacobs about being raped by human-looking hybrids who then threatened to abuse their children if the women didn't cooperate. Abductee Beverly said that when she was abducted, an alien told her that to allow such hybrid cruelty against her while she was in an alien craft was necessary, because, as the alien said, the expression is necessary. In other words, if the alien wasn't referring to genetic expression, such cruelty may be considered necessary for some aspects of the IFSP intervention. To a certain extent, the IFSP aliens can be selectively bred so that they will say little about atrocities and corporations by IFSP operatives on subsequent target planets. Vernon's claimed to have eliminated bad genes in order to improve such aliens, yet after more than 100 million years of interventions, Vernon's know how to locate, identify, and eliminate or alter those troublemaking genes that can be so unsettling. The end result can be disastrous in some respects. Inwardly represented, compliant subordinates who don't quite feel the pain and horror of a target population, and by keeping the train of genetic improvements ever in motion among the IFSP-dependent populations, Vernon's can step in and tinker with troublemaker genes when discontent arises. How do such aliens rationalize what would to us seem to be oppressive abuse of others' sensitivities? Since the three ellipticals hyperversal faction and its hybrid intermediaries became more voluble in 2004, in my case, IFSP aliens have communicated that, except when stimulated to do so, they've been preempted. Aliens of the three elliptical factions say that overly emotional tendencies are eliminated to prevent conflicts and maintain order. Although they try to be subtle about it, their emphasis is clearly on security. They give out other messages about effectively managing various populations in order to prevent violence and enforce the larger ecology. Of course, competing aliens argue that when a population has the requisite science, they may decide to genetically improve themselves and shouldn't necessarily be compelled to do so. Implicit in the perspectives in the assumption that one alien group or another will either help or will provoke an emerging population to make genetic changes. Already at this stage in human-alien relations, we see a distinct pattern. Technology and regime oneness of mind have stifled some aliens' ability to think independently. Like IFSP Greys, they may imply that, in a sense, They are only shells of a larger sentience. Social identity is certainly more advanced than detachment, but critical judgment has been impaired in some aliens. When the opportunity arises, the dominant alien of an alignment may prefer to eliminate too much emotion in other aliens rather than too little. Consequently, there are cascading misjudgments when the regime turns its attention elsewhere. Emerging populations are cited as bad examples, and some planets are destroyed during psychotronic propaganda-driven interventions. Complicating such situations are greater rivalries and the fatal ironies that arise when one rigidly structured misconception compounds another. The result can be a mismatch between the delicate, naturally evolved reality of an emerging planet's biomes and the policies of an intervening regime. In some cases, genetic modification causes infirmities, elimination of vital genes, and greatly extended lifetimes that lead to coldly indifferent geriatric conditions. During interventions where independent critique is most needed, there may be nearly none of an aggregate like the IFSP. Instead, epic crimes are easily rationalized in terms of an idealized yet incomplete social whole. Although the most primitive kinds of individuality will long have been replaced by community concerns, a more evolved next step kind of critique may have been stifled in the process. Did verdants eliminate certain genes for emotion in themselves, or did another population do that to them? For the time being, however, we are highly vulnerable. We're on the verge of a number of crises that stem from interaction with aliens. Alien-related technologies are now in human hands, and as history has shown, when advanced technology falls into the hands of greedy, self-serving regimes, conflict tends to follow. The first and greatest risk is that the New World Order elitists will use new technologies to oppress the disadvantaged, then precipitate crisis in order to prolong a failed regime and make grandiose claims to deep space terror. Ironically, some of the IFSP's reported direct operatives lead in such efforts. Alien-related programs in the government. Recently, David Rockefeller was under suspicion after cousin Nick Rockefeller, a Council on Foreign Relations member, caused public alarm when he made bizarre statements about an elite plan to microchip all humans. That resulted in concerted, detailed probing of David's response to various IFSP doings. Since he is 94 years old and unusually self-centered, David was easy to check on. Here's how such checking is done. When the case was brought up before a larger human community, it caught David's attention. How? Aliens who monitored our progress on the case tipped Rockefeller that he was being checked. That set up the perfect situation. David's worries about Nick's big mouth and our sudden concerted investigation allowed us to parade a variety of details about the IFSP and its direct operatives right before David's nose. While that was done, David's mood, feeling, and thoughts on the subject were inflated outward for us to check on. It was vivid and unmistakable. It's a fairly advanced technique reserved for special cases. All of David Rockefeller's reactions indicated a direct IFSP status. There was repeatedly and explicitly underscored by the attending aliens who considered the case important for us to know about. Then, once David's thinking was obvious and reaction began to sink in among the human community, IFSP and 3 ellipticals aliens tried to do damage control, but betrayed their awareness of David's status in doing so. When the case began to unfold further, IFSP and three elliptical aliens began to make statements about why it was necessary for them to have direct control of Rockefellers. Eventually, response was teased out. Explicit admissions about Rockefeller continued to this day, and Rockefeller's attitude about his direct operative status tested positive at intervals. Later. He seems to have boasted about it privately at some point. The case is under continued scrutiny, but since Rockefeller's Council on Foreign Relations was reportedly given effective control of both MJ-12 and PI-40 more than 50 years ago, such programs have been infiltrated to an extreme due to their removal from public control. That would help explain why numerous official sources say Republican presidents after Eisenhower were only given token information about the secret programs, while Democratic presidents were mostly excluded. Apparently, owning to the politics of self-interest and Rockefeller's web of contacts, Republicans are considered easier to control. In my opinion, the crimes committed via direct operative control of alien-related programs are worse than the intolerable acts that sparked the American Revolution. It's a deeper, more dangerous situation. This time it threatens the entire planet. It's ironic that the IFSP direct operatives promised their scheme on the monetarization of all that can be enumerated, while we have yet to hear about an alien society that uses currency for daily exchanges. Some aliens have said they allot energy credits or other appropriation to their citizens, rather than allow the chaos of unlimited wealth, because uncontrolled resource is both ruinous and prone to conflict. In their communications to date, individual aliens have shown little interest in material things and seem to prefer a life of larger involvements, a more equal kind of citizenship, the irony being that they can be collectively acquisitive. For example, should we not increase our brain capacity, and if so, through what agency? In the United States, Bible Belt Republicans say they oppose human embryo research, while Republican cabal insiders have cut deals with aliens who abductees say do forced impregnation of young human girls. Worse yet, narcotics are trafficked to fund alien-related programs to keep them out of public view. It's a ghastly contradiction, an open wound that threatens to fester, spawning further extremes of secrecy, which may be the abductor's plan, of course. Let's see. If non-IFSP alien resources are correct, some US and European right-wingers who claim to hate big government are actually involved in an Orwellian scheme to misguide human affairs and eventually secede control to the IFSP. It's an allegation that many here would find outlandish, yet the possibility should be at least considered, given strong wording and breakthrough gestures of the story's sources. Some non-Western operatives are reportedly complicit. In other words, a critical situation has reportedly developed, yet most humans remain unaware. Is it as government-trained remote viewer told Jim Mars? One alien faction is scheming to directly use and rule our planet? A variety of alien sources have corroborated the allegation. If true, it would help to explain why the IFSP's reported direct operative humans refute reports about global warming and endangering ecology, while at the same time they use economic leverage to deplete Earth's resources, which could make us dependent on the IFSP for trade. They may want to erode our self-sufficiency. There's further irony in such doings. Although the IFSP can be cold and harsh in its control, It isn't an aristocratic dictatorship. Were the IFSP to gain control here, its human operatives who now live richly would have to be removed or forced to live in austerity in order for the IFSP propaganda about equality to gain traction. So we see the specter of a reported 3,000 to 4,000 often wealthy direct operatives who may want to delay formal announcement of the IFSP's presence so that they can continue to indulge in earthly pleasures. According to non-IFSP aliens, the IFSP's operatives are both aided by and answer to an alien colonizer, yet may not want to compromise their lush lifestyles anytime soon. Instead, they do epic sabotage and delay all effective solutions. It's a rapidly deteriorating situation that can only be resolved through greater awareness. By gaining effective control of globalist money supplies, i.e. through Rothschild cohorts, ownership of the Federal Reserve Bank, they say they can steer humankind into a precipitating crisis. In other words, they say it's better for them to have actual control over the wealthy economies so they can be prevented from veering off into dangerously weaponized offensive stabs into deep space. Meanwhile, the IFSP tries to occupy star systems in our vicinity, and its reported direct operatives deliberately worsen U.S. militarization of outer space. IFSP and the three elliptical aliens have said that IFSP operatives are strategically planted so they can influence monetary policies, industry, media, and more. They say that only through such control can humans be engineered toward a relatively benign, non-sexual status, then be more easily integrated into a larger collective entity. In short, they say, yes, crimes against humanity have been committed through such operatives, and human conflicts have been manipulated to assure that IFSP operatives can wrangle effective control over human assets. But they argue that conflicts would have occurred anyway. They say racist attitudes and imperialism were bound to result in war. Hence, IFSP operatives' tipping of events towards World War II was a matter of course, not preference. They name Thyssen, an old Bush family client in Nazi Germany, has been mentioned by hyperversals. IFSP and three elliptical aliens say IFSP operatives have steered such crises toward a manageable, controlled outcome. They've even said that IFSP operatives have made sure that HIV was engineered and deliberately inserted into human populations for a reason: to dissuade humans of sexual abandon, to precipitate a crisis that also feeds into their larger strategy. I've inquired and have objected about the case repeatedly, with specific reference to Bush Sr. and former CIA Chief William Casey as outlined by whistleblower Kathy O'Brien. IFSP and three elliptical aliens' responses were as noted above: explicit admissions coupled with corroborating comments by non-IFSP aliens and hyperversals. I've made sure that others in the human community have witnessed such remarks. Ironically, mass death in Africa could create space for an IFSP cohabitation plan or yet another rescue offer. Along with other humans, I have remotely probed the HIV case over and over again from different perspectives, repeatedly coming up with a positive reading of what was stated, sadly enough. So we've expanded the scrutiny to allow for a variety of larger configurations and inputs. In cases of the sort, there is no room for error. Black budget whistleblower Dr. Michael Wolff also alleged that AIDS was human created. To humans, the IFSP's manipulations may seem cold, but IFSP aliens say their design must be effective. IFSP and 3 elliptical aliens say their efforts look further on a larger scale and that all populations go through ugly phases over time. They say crime and crude impulses must be contained and that humans aren't up to the task. At present, they argue a kind of realpolitik and note that human greed isn't yet under control. They say it would all have been ugly and brutal had they not intervened. Hence, they argue that the problem lies in human impulses. They can only be changed in a more advanced context. Some 3 elliptical aliens note that on some days, they hear news highlights regarding billions of planets, if not more. It's a cool, hard-nosed fact of life, they say, not a bed of soft-petaled flowers. The debate is ongoing. As humankind stumbles into further crises involving new technologies, it helps to remember that alien worlds have already experienced and have often resolved such situations long ago. So the IFSP is poised to take maximum advantage of any missteps we make. They'll probably offer technical aid and advice in order to deepen their involvement here. Given the prep work they've reportedly done, abductions, breeding, placement of operatives, plus exchanges with, if not control over, black budget factions, they may try to precipitate, then steer future crises to their advantage. Although competing aliens have given us a good heads up on exopolitics, the internal processes of human government can be compromised due to greedy and secrecy there. When we ponder alternatives to the IFSP scheme of fast burn resource depletion, the IFSP will offer further inducements in exchange for a deeper role in our vicinity. Ironically, the IFSP is nearly insignificant in the Milky Way. We're surrounded by trillions of less destructive native alien neighbors. Nonetheless, a verdant presence in our galaxy is cause for concern among native aliens because verdants take 9.1 planets for themselves for every lesser native population that joins the IFSP. At 2.032 billion verdants per planet, this means that 18.491 billion verdants rush in for every single planet of 5.5 billion that joins the IFSP. It's a ratio that's tilted toward verdant dominance of other member planets. Hence the concern here about verdant designs on Earth. Again, an advanced alien source independent of the IFSP says that the IFSP's affiliated aliens are less than 0.0x% or somewhere between 1 and 10,000, 1/10,000th and 1/100th of the aliens in our sister galaxy, Andromeda. Extrapolating that ratio to our galaxy, it would seem that the IFSP is nearly insignificant in the Milky Way. One human who contacted Philip Kraft and provided that he was assigned an ambassador role in the verdant opening to humankind told Kraft he was taken to spend 4 years on a verdant occupied planet 2 weeks travel distance from us in the Milky Way. If we gauge the planet's distance using information provided, the planet would be 38,356 light years away, allowing for navigation out and around different arms of the Milky Way. The distance could come between some 20,000 to 30,000 light years, which would place the nearest reported verdant outpost far from Earth. Since The main visible part of the Milky Way is only 80,000 to 100,000 light years in diameter. A 20,000 to 30,000 light year distance means that verdants would be camped on a planet that may be in a different arm of our galaxy. In other words, verdants are not significant in our part of the Milky Way. There are roughly 150 galaxies of various sizes that are closer to us than is the verdant home galaxy. In August 2009, one hyper-advanced alien conveyed a map of the Milky Way showing that the verdant-based planet to be about 36,000 light years away, in straight linear terms, or about 38,000 light years travel distance, if we add travel into the unobstructed space away from our Orion arm of the galaxy. Then continue in one or two straight jumps toward the planet's location, near the plane of the galaxy's spiral arms. The map showed what appeared to be the verdant's navigation route to the planet, curving slightly away from our Orion arm of the Milky Way, and then following the arm around in a general direction of the galaxy M83. In other words, the verdant-based planet would be a little more than 1/6 of the distance around our galaxy, and would be located in the vicinity where the inner Sagittarius arm of our galaxy spirals out to nearly the same radius distance that we are located from the galaxy center. More importantly, the planet is located where the straightest, shortest travel route from the reported verdant home galaxy M83 arrives at the Milky Way. Verdants could take a short direct path back to their home galaxy and could also travel along the inner Scutum Centaurus arm of the Milky Way toward the galaxy center, perhaps to seek resources. Although the distances are large, the route from here to the verdant base appears to proceed along the plane of our galaxy's spiral arms, quite possibly to duck down and stay close to the galactic plane in order to hide near the shadow and dust of star systems along the segments of their trip. And if that's the case, then verdants are trying to be discreet about what they're doing there. They may try to lessen some local native aliens' fear of a verdant presence by offering trade with them. Our best option is to expose the facts of human-alien interactions, allow for more transparency, and then move on for the better. Honesty is always the best policy. Aliens are faced with similar dilemmas in their own societies. They must step back and assess whether their community is correct or whether they need to change it. Some aliens in overgrown predatory populations may feel as though their lives are meaningless and inconsistent. Should they speak out against wrongdoings or simply ignore the underside of the off-world policy? Others may be mollified by the feel-good effects of psychotronic technology. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty deep. Well, thanks again for joining me, you guys. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will be bringing you more documents. So, mad love, Star Tribe. Stay lit.